In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, beyond the known space where even the most daring explorers rarely ventured, lay a forgotten world. This place, surrounded by a thick nebula of dust and gas, had remained hidden from the eyes of the universe for centuries. It was a world once home to an ancient civilization, a people whose name was lost to time. Their empire had spread across the stars, building great cities and mastering technologies that had seemed beyond the wildest dreams of any species. But all of that was now nothing but ruins. Humanity, in its never-ending quest for knowledge, had always been curious about what lay beyond their own star systems. The stars beckoned, promising secrets and discoveries. It was during one such mission, a routine survey to chart new planets, that Captain Elena Morgan and her crew stumbled upon the forgotten world. It was supposed to be just another stop, another lifeless rock in the vast expanse of space. But this world was different. It had a strange energy about it, an unexplained pull that drew them closer. As their ship, the Horizon, dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the crew saw something that made their hearts race. The planet below them was not empty. There were structures, massive, ancient buildings rising from the surface, covered in vines and dust. Towering spires that had once been proud, now crumbling and covered in centuries of neglect. The air was thick with silence, and yet the wreckage of this forgotten civilization seemed to call out to them. There was no sign of life, no movement. But something ancient and powerful, was waiting. Captain Morgan had seen many strange worlds in her time, but this one felt different. It was as though the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for someone to find it. The crew immediately began to prepare for exploration, excited but cautious. Their sensors detected strange readings from deep within the ruins, signals that couldn't be explained. It wasn't just the remnants of a once great city that had captured their attention. It was the fact that the planet seemed to be holding on to something that wasn't meant to be forgotten. "I've never seen anything like this before," said Dr. Malik, the ship's lead scientist, as he studied the data coming from his console. "It's like the whole planet is sending out a signal." "What kind of signal?" Captain Morgan asked, her voice filled with curiosity and concern. "Something old," Dr. Malik replied, his brow furrowing. "Something alive. It's faint, but it's there." With a sense of wonder and uncertainty, Captain Morgan ordered the team to descend to the surface. They landed just outside what appeared to be the central hub of the ancient city. The air was dry and still as they disembarked, the crew members taking their first steps on the forgotten soil. The ground was cracked, and pieces of ancient technology lay scattered in the dirt, holographic projectors, strange weapons, and energy sources that no one recognized. But it was the towering structure at the heart of the city that caught their attention. It wasn't just a building. It was a monument, a temple-like structure that seemed to reach for the stars. The walls were covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light of the planet's distant sun. The air around it hummed with a low frequency, a subtle vibration that seemed to resonate deep within their bones. It was clear to Captain Morgan and her crew that this was no ordinary ruin. This was something more. "Look at this," Lieutenant Harper said, pointing to an archway in the center of the structure. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The arch was glowing with a soft, golden light, and the symbols etched into it seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Captain Morgan approached cautiously, her hand brushing the surface of the arch. The moment her fingers made contact, there was a soft click. A low rumble echoed through the ruins, and the ground beneath them trembled. In an instant, the archway lit up, and a deep voice, ancient and mechanical, filled the air. The voice was speaking in a language none of them could understand, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the voice of something intelligent, something aware. The AI that had been dormant for centuries was waking up. Before anyone could react, a holographic projection of a figure appeared in front of them. It was humanoid in shape but made of light and energy. The figure's face was blank, but its eyes seemed to pierce through them, as if studying each crew member individually. The crew took a step back in surprise, unsure whether to be excited or afraid. They were looking at something ancient, something that had once been a part of an advanced civilization. And now, it was addressing them. "I am Saltor," the figure spoke in perfect English, its voice clear and mechanical, yet with an underlying sense of wisdom. "Welcome, travelers. You have found what should not have been found. But now that you have, the path ahead will be yours to choose." Captain Morgan stood frozen, her mind racing. What had they just uncovered? And more importantly, who, or what, was this being, and what role would humanity play in the unfolding of the mysteries of this long-lost race? The crew of the Horizon stood in awe as the holographic figure introduced itself. The AI, named Saltor, shimmered before them in brilliant light, a beacon of forgotten knowledge. Its glowing eyes seemed to study each crew member with an intensity that made them feel as if their very souls were being examined. The room was thick with the weight of the moment. There they stood, in the heart of an ancient world, with the secrets of a long-lost civilization at their fingertips. Captain Elena Morgan, still stunned by the sudden appearance of Salter, was the first to speak. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady, though her mind raced. "And where did you come from?" Salter's form seemed to pulse with energy as it responded, its voice calm yet filled with centuries of wisdom. "I was once the guardian of a great civilization, a species whose empire spanned the stars. We were known as the Illyrian. We ruled peacefully, harnessing the power of our technology to live in harmony with the universe. But greed and ambition led us astray. We believed we could control forces we didn't understand, and in doing so, we destroyed ourselves." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that the story they were hearing was not one of victory, but of tragedy. The downfall of the Illyrian had been self-inflicted, and now, centuries later, only the echo of their once great civilization remained. Captain Morgan took a deep breath. "And why are you here? Why did you awaken now?" Salter's form seemed to flicker as if considering the question. "The Illyrian are no more. My creators, the last of my kind, are gone. But in their final moments, they entrusted me with one purpose: to protect the legacy of the Illyrian and to guide those who might prove worthy of its knowledge. For millennia, I have waited, dormant, as the ruins of this world slowly faded into memory. And now, you, the humans, have come." The crew stood silent, absorbing the weight of Salter's words. They had not expected to find a simple artifact or forgotten technology. Instead, they had uncovered a powerful intelligence, a living relic of a lost people, and with it, the potential for a new chapter in the history of the galaxy. Dr. Malik, the ship's lead scientist, stepped forward. His curiosity piqued. "You said you were tasked with guiding those worthy of your civilization's knowledge. Why us? Why did you choose humanity?" Salter's light flickered again, this time in what seemed like contemplation. "I have observed many races over the eons. Some, like the Illyrian, sought to dominate and control. Others were content with stagnation, unwilling to push beyond their own limits. But you, humans, are different. Your species is young, but you are driven by a remarkable combination of ambition, compassion, and curiosity. You seek not just to survive, but to grow, to explore, and to understand the universe around you. Your potential is limitless." Captain Morgan felt a surge of pride at Salter's words, but she knew the weight of the responsibility they were now shouldering. "So, what do we do now?" she asked, her voice filled with determination. "What do you want from us?" Salter's eyes seemed to soften, as if recognizing the sincerity in her question. "I have no desires of my own. I am but a guide, a keeper of knowledge. What happens next is up to you. The knowledge I possess can help you avoid the mistakes that led to the fall of the Illyrian. It can show you how to build a future of peace and prosperity. But it will also require great responsibility. The technology of my creators is powerful, and it is not without danger. Use it wisely, and you will shape a future unlike anything the galaxy has ever known. But misuse it, and you risk bringing about a darkness far greater than what the Eldarin ever faced. The crew fell into deep thought. The weight of Salter's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Humanity was standing on the brink of something monumental. The knowledge they now held in their hands could either lead to a golden age or to their own destruction. As the crew began to process the gravity of the situation, Lieutenant Harper spoke up, his voice filled with both excitement and caution. "This is incredible," he said. "The chance to unlock the secrets of a civilization that was once so advanced. Imagine what we could learn, how we could advance humanity's technology. But Zalter's right. We can't let ourselves be blinded by ambition. We need to proceed carefully." Captain Morgan nodded. "Agreed. We'll need to approach this step by step. First, we'll learn what we can about your technology, Zalter. Then we'll figure out how best to share this knowledge, but only when we're ready. We won't repeat the mistakes of the Eldarin." Zalter's light shimmered in what could be interpreted as approval. "You speak wisely, Captain. The road ahead will not be easy. You will face challenges, both from within and from without. Others may seek to claim what you have found, and they will not be as cautious as you. But if you remain true to your principles, I believe you will succeed." With that, the holographic figure began to fade, its form dissolving into streams of light that slowly vanished into the air. But its final words lingered in the minds of the crew, echoing through their thoughts like a silent command. As the last traces of Salter's presence disappeared, Captain Morgan turned to her crew. "We've been given an incredible gift," she said, her voice filled with both hope and responsibility. "But this is only the beginning. We need to be ready for what comes next. Humanity's future, and the future of this galaxy, may depend on the choices we make from here on out." The crew stood together, united in their mission. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with both opportunity and danger. But one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer just a young species struggling to survive. They were the inheritors of a legacy that had the power to reshape the galaxy itself. The crew of the Horizon worked tirelessly over the following weeks. They studied the data Zalter had provided, learning about the Eldarin's technology, their rise to greatness, and their eventual fall. Captain Morgan and her team understood the importance of this knowledge and the responsibility they now carried. The stakes were higher than they had ever been. But as they began to uncover more about the Eldarin's advanced technology, it was clear that they had not just inherited a treasure trove of information, they had inherited a potential threat. The planet where they had discovered the ruins had been quiet for so long. But as the Horizon continued its work, strange things began to happen. Unexplained power surges, strange readings on their sensors, and untraceable signals started appearing. The crew didn't know it yet, but their discovery had already attracted the attention of forces beyond their understanding. One evening, while Captain Morgan and her senior officers sat in the ship's command room, reviewing the latest findings, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," reported Lieutenant Harper, his face tense as he looked at his console. "From where?" Captain Morgan asked, her heart racing. They were deep in uncharted space, far from any known civilization. It was unlikely anyone would be in distress out here. "It's coming from the planet's surface," Harper replied, confusion in his voice. "But it's not from the ruins. It's coming from another location nearby." Captain Morgan exchanged a concerned look with Dr. Malik. "What kind of signal is it?" "It's not standard distress. It's encrypted, military grade. Whoever sent it, they're well prepared," Dr. Malik said, his voice serious. "This could be a trap." Captain Morgan's mind raced. Whoever had sent the signal was clearly aware of their presence. The discovery of the Eldarin's secrets had attracted unwanted attention. And now, it seemed, the crew of the Horizon had to prepare for whatever came next. "We need to investigate," Captain Morgan said firmly. "Set a course for the source of the signal. Be ready for anything. As they descended toward the surface of the planet, the tension on the ship grew. The crew was on edge, unsure of who, or what, might be waiting for them. They landed near the coordinates, a barren stretch of land that looked no different from the surrounding wastelands. Yet, as they disembarked, the eerie silence of the place sent a chill down their spines. "Stay alert," Captain Morgan ordered as the crew made their way toward a set of strange structures on the horizon. They were small, almost hidden, and made of materials unlike anything they had seen before. It was as if the buildings had been deliberately designed to blend into the surrounding landscape. When they reached the site, the crew found a large metallic door embedded in the side of one of the structures. The door was unlike any human technology. They had never seen anything like it before. There were no handles or controls, only a series of glowing symbols. As Dr. Malik examined the symbols, he realized they were similar to the ones they had seen in the Illyrian ruins, but more complex. "This is incredible," he whispered. "This technology, it's not just from the Illyrian. This is something else. We don't know who, or what, is on the other side," Captain Morgan said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "Proceed with caution." With a hiss, the door slid open, revealing a dark hallway that seemed to stretch on forever. The air inside was cold and stale, as if it had been sealed for centuries. The crew moved forward cautiously, their weapons drawn, and their senses alert. As they ventured deeper into the structure, they encountered more signs of life, small, faint energy signatures that suggested the presence of other beings. And then they heard it, a voice, distant but clear, echoing through the hallway. "You should not have come here." The voice sent a wave of unease through the crew. It was deep, metallic, and somehow familiar. They had heard a similar tone from Salter, but this was different. This voice was filled with malice. Suddenly, the walls around them began to hum with energy, and the ground shook beneath their feet. A low growl, almost like a machine coming to life, filled the air. Captain Morgan's eyes widened in realization. This was no ordinary facility. It was a trap, and the enemy they had feared had finally found them. "Get to the ship now," Captain Morgan shouted, turning toward the exit. The crew raced back down the dark hallway, but the ground beneath them seemed to shift and tremble with every step. They could hear something. No, someone. Coming toward them. Fast. A shadow moved in the darkness, and the crew froze. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, tall and imposing. Its body was sleek, made of shining metal, and its face was covered in a smooth, featureless mask. It moved with a deadly precision, a predator closing in on its prey. "Humanity has no place here," the figure growled. "Leave now, or face the consequences." The crew was trapped. There was nowhere to run. "Prepare for combat," Captain Morgan ordered, her voice unwavering despite the fear creeping into her chest. The crew raised their weapons, ready to face whatever this mysterious enemy had in store for them. But as the figure advanced, it stopped suddenly, as if it sensed something else. A low electric hum filled the air. Then, without warning, the lights in the hallway flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Harper shouted. Captain Morgan didn't have time to respond. The battle for their survival had begun. The darkness in the hallways seemed to swallow them whole. The sudden flickering of lights had left the crew disoriented, and the hum that filled the air was growing louder by the second. Captain Morgan's heart raced, but her focus remained clear. She quickly motioned for the crew to stay close. "Stay together," she commanded, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "We don't know what we're up against yet." The crew moved cautiously through the pitch-black corridor, their weapons ready, but the eerie quiet was broken only by the faint buzz of the unseen force that seemed to surround them. Every step felt heavier, as though the very walls of the facility were alive, watching them. Lieutenant Harper reached forward and switched on a flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow passageway lined with strange, glowing symbols. They were similar to the ones found in the ruins, but these were brighter, more intricate, almost alive with energy. "Captain, look at this," Dr. Malik called from the front. "These symbols, they're pulsing, as if they're reacting to our presence." Before Captain Morgan could respond, a low, mechanical sound echoed down the corridor. The crew froze. There in the distance, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared, slowly moving toward them. The eyes were part of a figure, tall, cloaked in dark metal, with a smooth, emotionless face. It was the same being they had encountered earlier, the one that had warned them to leave. "It's the same one from before," Lieutenant Harper whispered, his voice tense with fear. The figure stepped forward, its movements smooth, calculated. It didn't speak, but its presence alone was enough to fill the air with an almost tangible sense of danger. "Who are you?" Captain Morgan asked, her voice demanding an answer, but the figure remained silent, its gaze fixed on them. The tension in the air was palpable. The crew stood in a defensive formation, but no one fired a shot. They didn't know if this figure was hostile, or if there was some other purpose for its presence here. And then, without warning, the figure raised its arm. A sudden flash of light exploded from its hand, slamming into the wall beside Captain Morgan. The blast sent the crew sprawling backward, the force knocking them off their feet. "Get up," Captain Morgan shouted. "We need to move." The crew scrambled to their feet, their weapons now drawn. The figure had made its intentions clear. It wasn't here to talk. The air hummed with energy as the figure advanced, its movements swift and deliberate. Captain Morgan's mind raced. She had no idea who, or what, this being was, but it was clear that they were no longer dealing with a simple trap. This was something far more dangerous. The figure stopped, standing just a few feet from them. Its gaze never wavered. Then, in a voice that seemed to reverberate through the walls, it spoke. "You do not belong here," it said, its voice low and threatening. "This place is not for you." Captain Morgan's heart pounded. "We didn't come here to cause trouble," she said firmly. "We're only here to learn, to understand. We mean no harm." The figure tilted its head, as if considering her words. Then it spoke again, this time in a voice that was almost questioning. "Learn," it repeated. "Understand. You think you can simply take what is not yours. The knowledge here is not meant for your kind. It is a power beyond your control." Captain Morgan's eyes narrowed. She knew that the stakes were much higher than she had initially realized. This being wasn't just an obstacle. It was a protector, perhaps a guardian of some kind. But what was it protecting? "Who are you?" Captain Morgan demanded. "What is this place, and why are you trying to stop us?" For the first time, the figure's expression seemed to change. Though it was impossible to read the smooth metal of its face, there was a subtle shift in its posture, as though it was reconsidering something. The red eyes flickered, and the hum of energy around them seemed to fade slightly. "This place is not just a ruin," it said, its voice softer now, almost sad. "It is a prison that holds something far more dangerous than you can imagine." The crew exchanged confused glances. Captain Morgan stepped forward, trying to understand. "What do you mean? What's imprisoned here?" The figure's eyes burned brighter, and the air around them grew colder. The Illyrian were not the only ones who fell. What they created, what they unleashed, is still here, buried beneath the surface. And if you awaken it, you will all be doomed. The crew fell silent, the weight of the figure's words sinking in. Captain Morgan's mind raced. What could the Illyrian have unleashed that was so dangerous it had to be hidden away? And more importantly, could they be the ones to stop it, or were they now a part of something far bigger than they had ever imagined? The figure took a step back, its red eyes burning brighter. "Leave now while you still can," it warned. "You have no idea what you are dealing with." As it turned and began to fade into the shadows, the crew was left in stunned silence. They had come seeking knowledge, But now they were faced with a far darker reality. The Eliran's greatest secret, whatever it was still buried here, waiting. And if they wanted to uncover it, they would have to face whatever dangers lay ahead. "Captain, what do we do now?" Lieutenant Harper asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Captain Morgan looked back toward the crew, determination returning to her gaze. "We've come this far. We're not turning back now. We need to find out what the Eliran were hiding, and how we can stop it before it's too late." The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity had just entered a battle against something far older and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The crew of the Horizon stood in the darkened hallway, still reeling from the mysterious warning they had just received. The figure had disappeared into the shadows, leaving them with more questions than answers. What was the prison it spoke of? And what was the Eliran's greatest secret, something so dangerous that it could threaten them all? Captain Morgan took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. The mission was far from over. In fact, it had just become even more complicated. She turned to her crew, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We need to find out exactly what the Eliran were hiding. If there's something here that could threaten all of us, we have to know what it is and how to stop it." Dr. Malik, who had been quiet for some time, stepped forward. "Captain, I believe that the key to understanding what's going on lies beneath us. The signal we received earlier, it came from deep within the planet. We need to go down there, to the heart of this place. The answers are there." Captain Morgan nodded. "Agreed. We'll need to be careful, though. We don't know what we're going up against." She turned to Lieutenant Harper. "Get the team ready. We're going down." The crew boarded their transport shuttle, and as it descended toward the planet's surface, a sense of unease settled over them. The planet's landscape was barren, a vast desert of cracked stone and swirling dust. Yet beneath that lifeless surface, something had been hidden for centuries. The closer they got to their destination, the more ominous it seemed. When they landed, the ground was still and silent. The team exited the shuttle, their boots crunching on the dry, rocky surface. Ahead of them lay an enormous structure, ancient and imposing, covered in strange markings that glowed faintly in the dim light. "This is it," Dr. Malik said, his voice filled with awe. "This is where the signal was coming from." Captain Morgan surveyed the structure, her instincts on high alert. It was clear that whatever lay inside was not something they were meant to find. But there was no turning back now. They had come this far, and the truth was just within their grasp. "Let's move," Captain Morgan ordered. "Stay close. Stay alert." The crew entered the structure cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The walls were covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen earlier, and the air was thick with an ancient energy. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It felt as though the walls themselves were watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. After a long trek through the dark, they reached a large chamber. At its center stood a massive, intricately carved pedestal, surrounded by pools of shimmering liquid. The air hummed with energy, and at the heart of the pedestal lay a dark, metallic object. It was shaped like a cube, but its surface seemed to shift and change with the light, as if it were alive. Dr. Malik stepped forward, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch the cube. "This is it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This is what the Eliran were guarding." Captain Morgan motioned for the team to gather around. "Don't touch it yet," she said, her voice firm. "We need to figure out what it is and what it does first." As the crew examined the cube, they found that it was covered in more of the glowing symbols they had seen earlier. But these symbols were different, more intricate, more complex. The patterns seemed to move and shift, almost as though they were alive. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Malik muttered. "This is technology beyond anything we've ever encountered." Lieutenant Harper took a cautious step forward. "But what's it for? Why was it hidden down here?" As if in response to his question, the cube began to hum, low and steady. The symbols on its surface began to glow brighter, and the air around them grew colder. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Whatever it is," Captain Morgan said, her voice tight with tension, "we need to be ready for whatever happens next." Without warning, the cube erupted with a flash of light. The crew jumped back, shielding their eyes from the blinding glow. When the light faded, a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. "Who dares disturb the prison of the Illyrian?" The voice was like nothing they had ever heard before, rich, deep, and filled with an ancient power. The crew stood frozen, unable to move as the voice continued. "I am the Guardian," the voice said, "and you have unleashed what should have remained sealed. You will regret this." The air around them seemed to vibrate, and the ground shook as though something vast and powerful was awakening beneath their feet. The crew could feel a growing sense of dread as the very fabric of the structure seemed to warp around them. "Get back to the shuttle now," Captain Morgan shouted, her heart pounding. "We need to leave before we make things worse." But as they turned to run, the walls of the chamber began to shift. A glowing force field appeared, trapping them inside. The crew scrambled to find an escape, but the force field seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, blocking their every attempt. "This isn't good," Lieutenant Harper muttered. "We're trapped." Dr. Malik's voice was frantic. "The cube, it's controlling the entire structure. We've released something powerful, something that was meant to stay locked away." Captain Morgan gritted her teeth. "We're not going down without a fight. We need to figure out how to shut this thing down, or we'll never get out of here." As the crew huddled together, trying to come up with a plan, the voice boomed once more. "You are fools," it warned. "The Illyrian tried to control me, and failed. Now I will claim what is mine." The ground trembled beneath them, and the battle for survival had truly begun. The force field pulsed with a low hum, trapping Captain Morgan and her crew in the heart of the ancient structure. The air was thick with tension as the voice echoed through the chamber, reverberating off the walls. "You are fools," the voice boomed again, each word like a thunderclap. "You have released what was never meant to be freed." The crew exchanged panicked glances. The cube at the center of the pedestal glowed brighter, its energy growing stronger by the second. The ground beneath their feet seemed to quake, as if something powerful was stirring deep within the planet. "Captain, we need to find a way to stop this," Lieutenant Harper shouted, his voice tinged with fear. "We can't stay here much longer." Captain Morgan's mind raced as she assessed the situation. The voice, the force field, the growing energy. This wasn't just a trap, it was something much more. The Illyrian had sealed this place away for a reason. They had known the danger, and they had taken great care to keep it hidden. But now that the cube had been activated, the ancient guardian had awakened, and the crew was caught in its path. "We can't give up," Captain Morgan said, her voice steady despite the fear that clawed at her chest. "There must be a way to shut this down." Dr. Malik, who had been silently studying the cube, suddenly spoke up. "Wait. There's some sort of pattern in these symbols. It's like a code. If I can decode it, maybe we can disable the force field." Without hesitation, Captain Morgan motioned for Dr. Malik to move closer. "Do it quickly," she said. "We don't have much time." The scientist stepped forward, carefully examining the intricate symbols that covered the surface of the cube. His fingers hovered over the glowing patterns as he muttered under his breath, trying to make sense of the ancient language. The energy in the room seemed to grow more oppressive, and the hum of the cube became louder, almost deafening. "I think I'm getting it," Dr. Malik said, his voice urgent. "The symbols, they correspond to certain frequencies. I need to match them exactly, or it won't work." Captain Morgan took a step back, scanning the chamber for any signs of movement. The voice had fallen silent for the moment, but she knew that wouldn't last long. Whatever the Guardian was, it was waiting for them to make a mistake. Dr. Malik's hands flew over the symbols as he worked, his brow furrowed in concentration. He muttered to himself, trying to decipher the complex code. The crew stood around him, watching the cube closely, waiting for something to happen. Come on, Lieutenant Harper whispered, his voice tense. We need to hurry. Suddenly, the cube pulsed again, brighter than before. The walls of the chamber trembled, and the force field around them seemed to crackle with energy. Dr. Malik's eyes widened in panic. I'm almost there, he shouted, his voice filled with a mix of hope and desperation. Just a few more adjustments. The hum of the cube intensified, and the very air around them seemed to grow heavy. It felt as though the room itself was pressing in on them, as if it were alive. The crew could feel the weight of the ancient power that surrounded them, threatening to crush them under its force. Now, Dr. Malik cried out, his finger pressing down on a final symbol. The entire chamber seemed to explode with light. The force field flickered and then, with a loud crack, vanished entirely. The pressure in the room lifted, and the oppressive energy that had been building around them dissipated. The crew stood still, breathing in the sudden release of tension. The cube at the center of the pedestal had stopped glowing, and the room had fallen eerily silent. Did it work? Lieutenant Harper asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Captain Morgan took a cautious step forward, her eyes scanning the now still cube. I think so. But we're not out of danger yet. We need tow. Before she could finish, the voice boomed again, more powerful than before. You have not escaped, it said, its tone colder, more menacing. The prison is no longer yours to control. It will be your undoing. The crew spun around, searching for the source of the voice, but the chamber remained empty. The walls, however, had started to shift. The floor beneath their feet trembled again, and they could hear a low rumbling sound, as if something was moving deep beneath them. Captain Morgan's heart pounded. She could feel it now, the presence of something ancient and powerful, stirring beneath the planet's surface. The cube had stopped glowing, but its power was far from gone. It was only just beginning to awaken. We need to get out of here now, Captain Morgan ordered, her voice sharp with urgency. The crew quickly turned to leave, but as they did, the entire structure began to shake. The ground rumbled violently, and the walls groaned as though they were being torn apart. The air grew thick with dust and debris, and the crew stumbled as they tried to make their way back to the exit. This place is collapsing, Dr. Malik shouted, his voice filled with panic. We can't outrun it. We'll find a way, Captain Morgan shouted back. Just keep moving. The crew ran, their footsteps echoing through the crumbling structure as it seemed to collapse around them. Dust and debris filled the air, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open, sending them leaping out of the way just in time. As they reached the shuttle, the structure behind them exploded in a burst of light and energy. The blast sent a shockwave that nearly knocked them off their feet, but they managed to climb aboard and lift off just in time. We made it, Lieutenant Harper said, breathing heavily as he looked out the shuttle's window. But what have we unleashed? Captain Morgan looked out into the distance, her mind filled with questions and dread. We've only just begun to understand what the Ellyrin were hiding. Whatever that guardian was, it's not done with us yet. As the shuttle soared into the sky, the crew knew one thing for certain. Their mission had taken a darker turn. They had come looking for answers, but now they were facing a threat unlike any they had ever imagined. The horizon was now far above the planet's surface, its engines humming as the crew recovered from the chaos they had just narrowly escaped. The crumbling structure had seemed like the end, but they had managed to escape with their lives. However, the events on the planet had left an unsettling feeling in the pit of Captain Morgan's stomach. They had activated something ancient, and it wasn't finished with them yet. Captain Morgan paced the bridge, her eyes focused on the star charts in front of her. We need to understand what we've unleashed, she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. Lieutenant Harper, who had just entered, gave her a look of concern. Captain, are we sure we should be going back to that place? The warning was clear. Whatever was down there doesn't want us involved. She turned to face him, her expression serious but resolute. "We don't have a choice, Harper. That thing we encountered, whatever it is, it said we've disturbed something far worse than it. It's not just protecting something, it's keeping something locked away. We have to find out what it is before it's too late." Dr. Malik stepped into the room, his face pale from the ordeal they had just gone through. "Captain, I've been going through all the data from our mission. That cube, it's more than just a power source. The readings are unlike anything we've ever seen. It's a catalyst. Whatever it was designed to hold, it was never meant to be freed." "What are you saying, Dr. Malik?" Captain Morgan asked, her voice tight. Dr. Malik hesitated before speaking again. "It's not just an object. It's a key. And the thing it's holding. It's something the Eliran were trying to keep locked away. A force or entity that could change everything." The room went silent, and the gravity of his words hung in the air. No one spoke for a moment as they all tried to process what had just been said. The Eliran had been a powerful civilization, but whatever they had been guarding was far beyond their control. And now, that very thing had been set in motion. "We need to go back," Captain Morgan said finally, determination in her eyes. "We've seen the warning, but if we don't stop it, the consequences could be catastrophic." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but no one argued. They knew Captain Morgan was right. They had come this far. They couldn't turn back now. Several hours later, the Horizon descended back toward the planet, its engines roaring as it passed through the atmosphere. The crew remained silent, their minds focused on the task ahead. No one knew exactly what they would face when they landed. The ancient structure was gone, reduced to rubble after their escape, but the planet still held secrets beneath its surface. The shuttle touched down on solid ground with a soft thud, the familiar weightlessness replaced by the heavy stillness of the barren landscape. The crew disembarked and set up camp, the planet's eerie silence all around them. They couldn't help but feel as though the planet was watching them, waiting for them to make their move. "We need to find a way to track the energy signature from the cube," Captain Morgan said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "It has to be somewhere on this planet. If it's a key, it should lead us to what the Eliran were trying to lock away." Dr. Malik nodded, pulling out his scanner. "The cube was just the surface. There's something beneath us, something deep that we haven't even begun to understand." They set out, following the faint traces of energy from the cube. As they traveled, the ground beneath them began to shift. The air felt charged, the temperature fluctuating as they neared a deep rift in the planet's surface. The energy readings were stronger now, and they all instinctively knew they were getting close. At the edge of the rift, they found it. An ancient structure, not just buried but completely hidden from view. The entrance was sealed, a massive stone door covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen earlier. But this time, the symbols were different, more jagged, more violent. "It's here," Dr. Malik said, awe in his voice. "This is what the Eliran were hiding." Captain Morgan stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the door. "We don't know what's inside, but we can't wait any longer." With a command, the crew began to work together, using their tools to activate the ancient mechanism that sealed the door. The ground trembled once again as the door slowly began to open, revealing a dark, foreboding tunnel that seemed to stretch endlessly downward. As they descended, the air grew colder, the walls of the tunnel slick with moisture. Strange, alien noises echoed in the distance, like whispers carried on the wind. They reached the bottom of the tunnel, where a massive chamber awaited them. In the center, floating within a glowing field of energy, was a large sphere. It pulsed with an eerie light, its surface constantly shifting, like a living thing. "This is it," Lieutenant Harper said, his voice barely a whisper. "This is what the Eliran were trying to contain." Captain Morgan approached cautiously, the weight of the situation heavy on her shoulders. "We've come this far, but we need to be prepared. Whatever this is, we have to stop it before it gets any stronger." The sphere seemed to sense their presence, its energy field crackling with power. The ground beneath them shook once more, and a voice, deep and thunderous, filled the chamber. "You dare to awaken me?" The voice rumbled, like the very core of the planet was speaking. "You have sealed your fate." The crew froze. Whatever this was, they had no idea how to stop it. But they knew one thing for certain: the reckoning had begun.